Hey, good morning, everybody. Good morning. And also with you. Okay, so listen, I want to welcome everybody to this culminating panel, the best panel of the SAME Small Business and Veterans Affairs Conference, Small Business Conference. Look, I want to thank you all for being here. Clearly, you are what's left of those who could not get early flights. So thanks very much for being here. Or as Dennis just pointed out a minute ago, they never realized that they had such large staffs, since most of you are, I guess, on the staffs. Okay, Dennis, that didn't work, so I'm glad I attributed it to you. Listen, this is your panel to discuss the current acquisition environment. There are a lot of changing rules and regulations. There are some things that are on the horizon that are going to impact small businesses, and this is an opportunity for us to convey some of those tactics and techniques and procedures to allow you all to be competitive in that realm, to position you for success. And that is really what we are trying to do here. My name is Major General Retired Rick Stevens. And as of yesterday, I celebrated my 1-year cooling off period anniversary. And so this is kind of my coming out party here, and I'm privileged to be here. I didn't really, this great thing about this is I can now, talk to people like Mike Weir about his, children's soccer games and college and all that, and not fear the wrath of the USACE Ethics, Council. So that's a good thing. But look, for the USACE family out there, I missed you. I missed you a lot. I know you have not missed me, but that's fine. It doesn't have to be that way. I really didn't intend to go this route, but about 10 months into my retirement, as I was finishing up about the 4th hour of the Today Show, my wife, looked me dead in the eye and just said, "Why are you always here?" And so I knew I had to do something. So I'm very proud now to be a member of Dawson and Associates, a premier public policy team in Washington, D.C., and that's it. And if you ask a question later on in this session, that's the extent of how you get to describe your business. We don't need 10 minutes of what a great small business you are, because you're all great small businesses, and we get that. We have a great team assembled for you this morning. Our intent is to have a conversation. And again, full disclosure, when I was in USACE, when I was on active duty, I hated these panels. I still hate these panels, right? It's just not me. I don't like being up in front of people. I'm always the 7th smartest person on the podium, right? It's very unnerving for me. I hear a lot of, blah, 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 talking point, blah, 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 right? And then there's the perception that you all folks that are sitting out there, you're just here to figure out how you can make money, right? That's those grubby contractors. They just want to make money. They just want the shortcuts to make their companies better. And I will just tell you, that's not the way it is at all. Frankly, I mean, we need panels like this. We need these sessions. We need to have these conversations. They are absolutely critical. And it's so what I thought before. Let's chalk that up to fake news, right? It's just not true. And the reality of it is, we do want you to be successful, and we know that what you want, there may be some of you out there that are driven by the bottom line and profit. Most of you have a good product. Most of you want to serve the public good. And that's something that we should never lose sight of. That's why you're here. That's why we're having this panel. The communication back and forth is absolutely a key ingredient to being successful. So let's have a conversation. Here's the other thing I'd ask you to consider. Just try getting on any one of these individuals up here's calendar. All right? It's hard. They're busy aligning the planets to where you get in to see them, getting through the gatekeepers. It's hard to do that. So here is your opportunity. You're in the office. You're sitting around the table having a discussion with them, and so let's take advantage of that. So here's the team. So, and each member of the team is going to get about 5 minutes to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives within their organization. We're going to start with Mr. Rob Wong. Rob is the Associate Administrator with the Small Business Administration. Not only that, he has been a CEO of a small business for over 20 years, took over his position in March of 17. So Rob, welcome, glad to have you here. Late addition was Major General Mike Weir, representing USACE. Actually, he was an early addition, and then he wasn't going to be on, but the draw of the crowd, made him say, "I've got to be there. I've got to have this conversation." So Mike Weir comes in. Mike, look, and again, full disclosure here, Mike took over my old position. And I'm sorry, Mike, for the way I left everything, and I'm glad you've had a chance now to clean things up. But Mike is currently the Deputy Commanding General for the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Tremendous amount of experience in the Corps, having commanded 2 divisions, South Pacific Division as well as Mississippi Valley Division. He commanded the district in Vicksburg, and he was the best battalion XO with whom I ever served in the 11th Engineer. That's what I wrote on his OER anyway. So, and then we have Brigadier General Mike Hoskin. Mike is currently the Director of Contracting at USACE, among other hats, because he's also the Director of Contracting for the Army, and today is representing Mr. Stuart Hazlett, and will speak to us about some of the key Army initiatives that are ongoing. Mike was also recently the Commanding General of the Expeditionary Contracting Command, and in addition to his MILDEP to the DASA-P, to Mr. Hazlett, he's got about 3 other hats that he wears, and I'll let him talk about that. Look, we have Miss Cindy Riedel, not Redial, as I was counseled this morning, Cindy Riedel. And Cindy is the Assistant Commander for Acquisition at NAVFAC. Cindy has 28 years of experience. She has about an $8 billion program over at NAVFAC. I don't know what she does in her spare time, but I'm guessing she doesn't have a lot of spare time. And then we have Mr. Dennis Milston. Dennis is the Associate Executive Director since January of 2015 for Construction and Facilities Management at the Department of Veteran Affairs. Dennis has over 30 years of facilities maintenance experience. He has also owned his own business, and I will just say to Dennis, thank you so much for what you and your organization do for veterans across the country, including me, since I'm now a veteran. So thank you, Dennis, for that. And then we have Colonel Scott Matthews. Scott is the Director of Facility Engineering at AFCAC. And Scott has been a squadron commander, a group commander. He has worldwide design and construction responsibilities. And Scott, thanks very much for being a part of this panel. So let's get to it. And that's all the time we have today. Any questions? Okay, let's start with Mr. Rob Wong. Rob, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon or good morning. How are you today? So let me be as brief as I can. You can always contact me. So I'll give you something you can use. Here's my email address, robb.wong@sba.gov. I know there's a couple of you here tend to answer email pretty well, so I'm also going to give you my cell phone number, 202-230-3128. I answer best by text. Give me some time. Stay on top of it. You can ask your questions there. You may not like my answers, but I will give you an answer that you can rely on. What are we doing at SBA? In general, you know that we have, our job is to make sure that 23% of the federal money spent is spent with small businesses. What does that mean? That means that we protect the minority, okay? The other thing we do is we run the 8A program. Any 8As here? This morning we've got to be active. How about HUBZone? Women-owned? Service disabled veteran? All right, here we go. So then we also have another product called All Small Mentor Protege. So one of our objectives is to make sure that our certifications are easier for you to get, and as the Major General said, so you can make money, okay? The other side, though, in my opinion, is that if you have that certification, it doesn't really matter unless you have contracts. So I divide up our office into 2 things, the certification. So as you know, we do 8A HUBZone, 8A and HUBZone. We have women, we're standing up a women-owned program, and then we are thinking about taking over the veteran program. We'll be able to bring all the major certifications under one roof, okay? What's more important, though, is we're trying to coordinate the house on the supply side, to be able to coordinate from the contracting officers to the OSDBUs, to our PCRs, so that we can basically do on-the-fly matchmaking, okay? To improve the service for you. One of the main things that tools you can use right now, if you've looked on LinkedIn or social media, we're trying to fix HUBZone, and those regulations just got published for public comment, I think, yesterday. So look on the Federal Register. We're addressing the 3 major issues that we have that have been a barrier to entry for HUBZones. But keep in mind, everything I'm trying to do is a yin and a yang, right? And look at this face, right? But so the yin is that we're going to help you on this side, but the yang is to make sure that it's easier for the contracting officers to get contracts out to you, okay? We can go into that later if you'd like. The other thing that we have, the category management is a really big issue that's coming up. The general perception is that it's going to shrink the number of unique opportunities, and it's going to size out a bunch of the small businesses that get on those contracts. Where we are helping is that we are going to OFPP, who is writing the policy for category management, and we are hitting them head on, but they're very receptive right now, and they're opening the door to tell us how to do it better. So what we're doing with things like Oasis, as an example, I think we're creating on-ramps for a lot of these companies, and the next iteration are coming. They're expanding it from something like 17 small businesses to over 150. What's really cool about this conference here is that I was with is it General Hoskins as well. We were also with you. We were there yesterday, day before yesterday, 2 days ago. Right, but generally speaking, USACE is going to try and create a policy so that everyone can try to standardize as best we can. We agree that category management is great for government, but it needs to be mindful of its application. So those are the high points, and I'll hand it back to the Major General. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rob. So look, so before we move on though, real quick, so show of hands from the audience, category management. So 2 days ago, I had never heard the term category management. Anybody else, was that a new term for you when you got here? New term, oh, very nice. So I'm not as dumb as I think I am then, maybe. So listen, so I know that impacts multiple folks up here. I would just ask, is anybody else on the panel want to talk a little bit about how category management is being implemented within their organization? I'll start with Mike.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so category management, what does that really mean? It really means smarter contracting. So when the Air Force and the Navy and the Army and we're looking at category management, it's really kind of going back about 20 years ago to where we were when we had managers of particular kind of commodities and services. DLA is a great example of that. They had item managers for everything from a uniform to a parachute to boots. And these were subject matter experts. So what the Air Force says, actually, the Air Force and GSA is kind of leading the effort right now in category management, but what they're really doing is they're doing analysis of spend. Where are they putting all their money? And who's doing all the buying? So does it really make sense for 47 different Air Force installations to be putting roofing contracts together? Or should you probably find somebody that's really smart in roofing and have them be the category manager for the Air Force or for the Army or for the Navy for that particular kind of commodity or service? So that's kind of where we're going. So this is not an attack on small business. This is not an attack on large business. This is just trying to do a little bit smarter business.
So having said that, Cindy, you want to talk a little bit now, back, and then Scott, I'll come over to you as well.
Follow up.
Yeah.
I think it's key to note too that some of it's just it really is about the requirement. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have one tool for roofing necessarily, but how is it we're buying it, or do we have a standard approach? I used the example at the round table, I think it was Wednesday. Grass mowing. There's various things that we're looking at as to what we're doing, standard performance specs. What is the requirement? I think the example on the roofing was, are we changing out the roofing system too soon? Should we have a standard timeline for that? And so I think it's also looking at that requirement and being smarter about what we're buying and standardizing what that is.
Thanks. And Scott, after you say your piece, or you might touch on, if you're a small business, why should you be concerned with this new approach? What would be something that they might think, let's sit down and think about that a little bit? Or do we believe that this is going to create advantages for the small business? So think through that.
was going to say, that's why I would like to introduce Dennis Guadarrama. I have standing in the back of the room. So Dennis works at the Air Force Civil Engineer Center. I look after primarily military construction and all things that we build, but Dennis really bridges the gap between the engineering, and AFICA is the organization, the Air Force Installation Contract Agency, that really does the contracting and acquisition. So he's that bridge on working category management at the Air Force Civil Engineer Center. I think one of the things that was touched on up here is, why is category management important in analyzing your spend? Well, one of the things in a recent job I've had in the last 2 years, the way the federal funding will flow down often in O&M, right, it will come in oftentimes in the second quarter of the fiscal year. You must meet an obligation target by the end of the third quarter, and it's got to be spent by the end of the fourth quarter. And usually a month before the end of the fourth quarter, they want most of it obligated. So it's all about how quickly can you get dollars obligated on a contract. That may not be the best and most efficient use of dollars on a contract. You may be paying a premium to use that contract, either a pass-through or there's a markup fee, but the speed is what counts. So if we can analyze that spend and have the appropriate vehicles in place, we may be able to do more work and spread that out using category management.
So I'll defer to the question and answer period if you're a small business and you still have concerns about category management. So we'll move on to our next panel member, which is Major General Mike Weir. Mike?
No, thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. And this is a great opportunity for me as well. But I would just offer, I mean, as a deputy commander for General Semonite, you realize, as you've heard him earlier this week, that we've got a tremendous opportunity for all of us in terms of the program. But and Mr. Niedermeyer, thanks for being here, of course, as well. This is a unique opportunity for all of us. I would just ask those that are serving in the Corps right now to stand up, if you will, just for a second. So Mike is working for us, which is key. Okay, and then all those that have worked in the Corps of Engineers before, if you could stand up. Oh, just keep standing, keep standing. Okay, all right, this is very telling. So over half this audience has got the answers on how to work with the Corps. Okay, please, you can sit down.
I told you it was mostly staff, didn't I, huh? Didn't I? Yeah. And I used to ask that question, folks would come to me and say, hey, how many folks you got working over there in the Corps of Engineers? And I'd say, about half of them. Sorry, I couldn't tell that joke when I was on active duty. Sorry. Go ahead.
All right, I cannot keep up, so nor will I try. But what I would offer is that, and I've got some great notes to follow, but there's two key things that come out of the opening. The Corps is all in, of course, with small business. We carry, obviously a lot of the work for the Army itself. There are reports, congressional interests, whether it be DOD, IG, or the Congress, that are insisting that we follow the law and follow the rules and how to hold ourselves accountable. I know Mike's going to talk about that some more as well. But I'm very interested in that piece of being accountable, and also, as we heard throughout the week, being innovative. We've got to figure out a way to connect those two. But they do go hand in hand. But it means a lot to me. I mean, literally to have Mark Tillotson in the audience, who knows where I first started in the Corps of Engineers. This has been a continuous journey for me to learn how to connect to get the mission done. And I will I'll kind of close at that, but increasing our capability into the future with small business, whether it be an increase up to $1 million in terms of the amount is a part of that, but it's not all alone. I think it takes all of us to figure out some of the key opportunities here we have in front of us. So I'll leave it at that. It takes internal training, but also it takes external accountability and alignment. So with that, I'll leave it, Rick.
Perfect.
Thanks.
All right, and I would just offer to you, if you have any concerns or questions about USACE and small business and how we operate, there's such a phenomenal small business and contracting team over at the Corps, and they are there to help you. And I say that with all sincerity, and having walked in Mike's shoes. So Mike, thanks for that. And now let's then go to Mike Hoskin, who's going to talk to us a little bit about from the Army's perspective. And actually, no, because I want to make snide comments, so I need to keep this.
Okay, so I'm Mike Hoskin. I've got a couple different titles. One of the titles is that I'm the HCA, or Head of Contracting for USACE. Very excited about this position, having a lot of fun with it. Building our nation is just an honorable thing to do. So this is probably the best job I've had in the Army. Other jobs that I'm currently doing is I'm a commissioner on the Senate 809 Acquisition Reform Panel. I'm the Director of Contracting of the Army, and I'm the military deputy to DASA-P. So a little bit busy. A couple things I want to talk about, though, I guess first and foremost is a gentleman named Mr. Tommy Marks, just recently retired, but he was in charge of small business for the Army, and he's a very close personal friend. About 6 months ago, he had to go before the Senate subcommittee on small business, and he was beat up, to be blunt, because the Army, and actually all across DOD, we really haven't done our due diligence in enforcing some of the small business and subcontracting kind of rules. So when a prime is awarded a contract, they're required to go into a database, ESRS, and put in their subcontracting plan. And then the contracting officer, requiring activity, should be monitoring to see if they're actually adhering to that plan. Well, there's a couple things going on. One of them that I refer to as bait and switch. And bait and switch is where a contractor, a prime, will say, hey, I've got these great teaming relationships with these small businesses, with these other large businesses, and here's my plan. We award the contract, and then they say, you know what, we're just going to do all this work ourselves. Well, there's a couple problems with that. One is that the companies that put their proposals together with the prime, they kind of expected, a return on investment. And in some cases, that didn't happen. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the stick, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the carrot. Okay, so the stick is that USACE, our contracting enterprise, will be checking. And we have two big tools. One is called liquidated damages. We have clauses in place in two of the larger acquisition strategies that I just recently approved that says if you don't file, if the prime does not file in ESRS what their plan is, and if they don't do good faith effort toward meeting those goals that they set forward, then we can actually take liquidated damages, take money off the contract. So that's one stick. Not sure how we're going to do that. There's a bunch of legal issues involved in that, and I've been talking with the Office of General Counsel on that. But one area that we do control 100% is past performance evaluation, CPARs. So I am personally going to go into ESRS on our larger contract awards, and I'm going to look to see if contractors have submitted their subcontracting plan, and then we're going to monitor the performance of the contract. And if we have situations where we have a bait and switch, or there's not good faith efforts going toward it, the past performance of that prime will be impacted. Now, if they say in their ESRS submission that we're going to carve out this percentage of work to small business, and they're successful, that will also be reflected in your past performance evaluation. So this could be something that says, hey, I'm a great contractor and I've performed honorably in your past performance evaluation, or it could be the opposite. So just want to kind of put that out there because this is a very important message. Tommy Marks, the Director of Small Business of the Army, told the Senate that we're going to get after this. And I promised Tommy that I would help him do it, and we would have USACE lead the Army in this effort. So enough fun.
All right, so Mike, I'm going to interrupt because that's what I do. So CPARs, so I'd ask the other services, do you all experience the same types of issues with, any kind of a backlog of getting the CPARs, submitted and current?
So who was in the panel yesterday? We had a CPARS panel yesterday where I was super honest with, everybody's raising shaking their heads. We had a panel yesterday on CPARS, and for NAFAC, that is something that we are focusing on this year to get at our backlog. I think all services have somewhat of a backlog. For NAFAC, just the sheer number of actions that we do, it really makes it quite difficult, but that is a focus this year.
Great, and Scott, similar?
I do know, yes, we have some backlog on the projects that we execute.
I'm not looking for actual numbers, but I'm
No,
not trying to hold
absolutely.
you accountable here, yeah.
But I will tell you, talking to my project manager that it is a cumbersome system that we need to look at some internal reform to work the CPAR system.
So then the follow-on question would be, all right, from a small business standpoint, what prevents a small business, or any business for that matter, from completing their CPARs? Because I think it's pretty well known how valuable that is in terms of generating future work or being competitive to get future work. So what prevents a small business? What do we think? Now, I'm saying from the government perspective, what do we think prevents organizations from completing those CPARs? Mike, any thoughts? Dennis, yeah. I'm
thinking.
Okay.
Okay, well.
Careful with that, though.
Okay.
Careful.
Okay, on CPARs, typically, historically, CPARs are written against the primes. Now, there's been recent legislation, I think in the last NDAA, that is now allowing us, depending upon the percentage of work that the subcontractors perform, that we can actually do a past performance evaluation of some of the subcontractors, which I think is a commendable thing to do. It gives the subcontractors now kind of some past performance history, which is good. And for every acquisition, we are required, the contracting community, most of us up here, we are actually required to take into consideration past performance in every contract award. So your past performance is a big issue. So I talked a little bit about carrot and stick. Let me just touch on a couple other things. Commissioner on the Senate 809 panel, what is that? It's a group of 17 very, very, very senior. I'm the most junior person on that panel. And very senior, very smart people, and we're rewriting the FAR, and we're rewriting the laws, Title 10 laws that are the backbone of the FAR. We've published 2 volumes, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and January 15th we will be publishing Volume 3, and we were mandated by the House and the Senate to streamline acquisition. If most of you all know government contracting, or you're learning today, but when the Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act was enabled in 1994, they created a thing called Simplified Acquisition Threshold, SAT. And back then, there was about 10 or 12 clauses and provisions, like how do you invoice? Today, there are 441 clauses and provisions that are either mandatory or optional for a purchase under $150,000. So why do we have the term simplified in the title? So we're going after it. So we'll see.
Hey, Mike, I'll do the jokes.
Okay, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
I was asked to talk a little bit about Army Futures Command. So the Army just recently stood up this Futures Command, and we have these teams that are built, and they have program managers and resource managers and people from TRADOC that build requirements, and they're all getting together, and they're looking at soldier lethality, future vertical lift, a number of different topics, long-range precision fire, and we're using kind of a relatively new, I don't really want to call it a contract vehicle, it's more of an agreement, but it's called OTA, Other Transaction Agreements. And so for the last 3 years, the Army's been doubling the amount of OTAs that we've been doing, both in numbers and also in dollar values. So if you are a small business, I would highly recommend that you Google Other Transaction Authority, or OTA. The target is to go after companies that historically do not do business with the government. Typically, the companies will join a consortium, and then we will do an agreement with that consortium. And it could be for communications, it could be for a number of different topics. And then we're going to ask you to produce like a white paper, and then potentially produce prototypes that we'll evaluate and decide if we want to take and go forward, and then do a larger buy across the Department of Defense or the Army. So that's important. OTAs is a new contract vehicle. I was asked this morning, what did I learn since I've been here? So I've talked to a lot of you. I've gone to almost every booth. And there are still significant barriers to entry to doing work with the government. And I'll tell you, I was curious how hard it really was. So about 2 months ago, I registered to get a DUNS number. It took 8 weeks. That's because I didn't hire a company and paid them $1,000 to do it for me. And then I thought, well, okay, so all the companies if we were going to do business, they have to register in SAM. So let me see how hard that is, because I'm telling everybody, hey, just register in SAM, no problem. So to register in SAM, you've got to download a form, you have to have it notarized, then you have to put it in snail mail and send it to them, and again, you have to wait 6 to 8 weeks. So if there's a solicitation on the street and you say, hey, this work is exactly what my company does, and you haven't already done those preliminary things, that's a significant barrier to entry. So myself and others are going to be working with the sponsors of these various organizations to see what we can do about streamlining that.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Very, very helpful. And there's no truth to the rumor that Mike wears so many hats to avoid sunburn. So, I'm sorry for that. Yeah, I kid because I love, remember. Okay, next we're going to move over to NAVFAC and Cindy. Cindy, please.
Finally, it's finally my turn. How is everybody? Yay, you're ready to hear all about NAVFAC, right? So I sit at the historic and beautiful Washington Navy Yard, so thrilled to be out of there for at least a few days here, even though it did rain yesterday. I want to talk a little bit about what we do. NAVFAC, for what I cover, we're worldwide, of course. We have 100 field offices, and pretty normally we're about $8 billion. Milcon of that is around, Milcon A&E is about 2 to 3 billion. The rest of it is a lot of services. Do I have any boss type services, the facilities type contractors? We may not have two. We have a couple of hands in here. That's a big piece of ours too. So when I talk about the full thing that we do at NAVFAC, we're kind of all over the map. Environmental, which I know we had a breakout session here. And so this year, we did an extra $1 billion, and we found out about that $1 billion in April. And without the help of all the small businesses, we were able to execute that workload through 30 September. So a tremendous job. We know that we can't do our work at NAVFAC without all the small businesses. So it's great to be here. We have a booth downstairs. On our small business, we did about 50% of the $8 billion that was eligible this year. About 50% went to small business. We execute 53% in the fourth quarter. And when I look at those statistics, again, a lot of the ability through small business and the things that we're all working on, that's how we get that executed. And we've got to continue to keep those tools in place that make it easy for both of us, right? You to get the work and us to be able to execute the work. And that's a lot of what we're working on. I want to tell the health of us a little bit. 83% competition rate. That is about double what the Navy is. So we are big on the competition. You see a lot of our MAC tools, our IDIQ tools, we call MACs. MATOCs, you call them Saber. So we all have a different a name for it, but it's all those multiple awards. So we'll continue to do those. We'll continue to look at a regional approach at NAVFAC of putting our tools in place. We have a few worldwide tools, but mainly we're more looking at the regional piece. And then the biggest thing, I've been in this job about 3.5 years now, and we are looking for efficiencies. And how can we move execution to the left? Without a doubt. How can we do that? These are things that I need your help to give me the good ideas, but really what we did was we take a very hard internal look at internal policies. So you may not see some of the things we're doing, but putting more higher thresholds out at our field offices so that they don't have to come all the way to headquarters to get something approved. How can they be more responsive, more effective? Looking at lean process. How many have ever waited a long time for a NAVFAC modification? Oh, that's not bad. I know. Our modification process is a bit slow. We're trying to work on that. And how can we lean our task order process, just become more efficient, more effective for both of us to be able to execute more. And I absolutely, we need your help in doing that and all those great ideas. Now, I don't want to give out my cell phone number. That was good. I guess I could. 757-469-7800. And you can always get my email address. And I do want to hear from you. Please send the emails. I'm much better at email. And I will get you into the office. And it's Cindy, CINDY.Redal, not redial, READAL @navy.mil. And we want to hear from you. We have the booth. What's our booth number, Bianca? 1243. They're still down there. There's still time to see them. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy, and beat Navy. So, let's go to Dennis.
Good morning. Well, at the VA, of course, we focus on a lot of health care and benefits for veterans, but we also have a very active construction program. Several $billion of spend every year, and a large part of that is done with small businesses, specifically with service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses and small businesses, veteran-owned small businesses. So there's a couple of really important initiatives that I'm personally working on and forcing a lot of my staff to work on, and it's why you will not get my phone number and you will not get my email, because if you're talking to me, it's a problem. I have 4 regional offices out there, and they better be talking to you to help find and grow small businesses. The other piece that is really a push and a focus for us is small business utilization is not a contracting problem. It is a program and project management problem. We need to, and we're working to change the perception with our project program managers, with our engineers out on the station that say, well, we don't want to deal with small business because it's always a higher cost, they're inefficient, they can't do the job, contracting throws them at us and we're stuck with them. No. We have to get out there, we have to meet the small businesses, we have to encourage the right ones to apply for the models. Where we have, and early in my career I found this program to be very, very effective, and it helped me be very, very successful, and we're now implementing a large piece of it at the VA. Find a small business that's responsive, use every tool in your kit. Use the set aside. Use the direct award if you have it, so that you can build with the organization the success with small business that tends to say, I have a problem, where's small business? How can I get small business to take this? On several of our hospitals, we get to the end of them, we have this $1 billion baby that we're growing, and we have the typical end of job change orders. The prime is tired, they want to go home. Twice now we brought small business in to do task orders to help us complete and push that project over the edge. They've been highly successful. They come in, they're motivated, their markups are less than the prime, they've actually saved us money going forward. So it's getting so in the VA, it's not talking to the contracting officers, it's getting out there to the engineers, to the program managers that are out there. And then the other thing we're focused on is how we know we have barriers to entry, and I'll talk specifically about Mark Tillotson's program, who now works for us. We need to groom small businesses early on so that they meet our requirements to procure. We're seeing the same 2 or 3 firms time after time after time. And that happens, and pretty soon they graduate. And we've done nothing to cultivate that next layer of contractors that can help us fulfill it. So then we're forced to go with large business all the time. Again, not necessarily the best solution for all of our projects.
Okay, very helpful. And I want to thank SAME again for including the VA in these discussions. I think it's just critically important because we all have very common goals in terms of supporting and enabling our small businesses. Okay, last and certainly not least, and I promised I would not ask him to explain the Space Force to anybody, so I'm going to hand it off to Scott. Scott?
Yeah, we were just kind of kidding. At some point in 5 years, it would be nice not to be the junior service anymore. So we'll move up in the batting order. No, so first of all, I think one of the important things about coming out here, these events, I've been to several, both at the national level and at the local level in San Antonio. The small business events are great to get out and listen to what ideas that you have. So for example, I can't count the number of people I've met this week, either in roundtable sessions or on the floor, that says, we want to help you. We saw what happened at Tyndall Air Force Base. We think we can help you. I will tell you, out of 2 of those conversations last night, we were looking at some things. I have a team on the ground right now. I sent your information forward last night to say, you may want to look at these types of technologies or these types of companies to potentially help with solutions to solve our problems at Tyndall. And we'll figure out the contracting vehicle and things to get there. So I think just making those connections and knowing what we don't know is very, very helpful. So I really appreciate that. We heard loud and clear both here and in San Antonio in August where our processes were broken, why it took so long. We got some very, very direct and candid feedback from industry, and I will say between the Air Force Civil Engineer Center, our director was Mr. Ed Oshiba, Mr. Terry Edwards took over the organization on Monday, and working with the Air Force Installation and Contracting Agency, FICA, they are looking at ways we can improve our process to make it quicker, because as many of you may have been in my presentation on Wednesday, and Mr. Niemeyer mentioned the National Defense Strategy, it is about speed and lethality, and that is what we need. And through the contracting process, I will tell you, it's hard to look a customer in the eye and say, I've got to wait 120 or 180 days to award a contract just to design, and they look at that as 120 and 180 days as time I could put mission on the ground somewhere. So, like I said, I heard and saw some very interesting things while I was here on things like, for example, a challenge as we look to push out into areas like the Pacific, and going back, if you think back to World War II and how we island hop, and some strategies that we need to put in place out there. There's development going on and building facilities that can withstand strong wind loads in those regions that all come out of a 20-foot shipping container that don't need heavy equipment to put up, as an example of a technology I saw that they've been working on. Fantastic. That's going to scratch an itch and maybe help us get out instead of relying potentially on Milcon as a solution. So I'm encouraged by that. Last December, I had this watershed moment. Outside our office in San Antonio, we live on Port San Antonio. It used to be the former Kelly Air Force Base. And we saw this area that had this fence around it. We knew they were doing some kind of construction. So I'm driving back and forth to work, and we realized that our commanding general, if you will, General Spacey, was out of town. And within 2 days, or the week that he was gone TDY, the walls of the building were up, and this facility started coming out of the ground. They opened it by the spring. And so we realized, we said, hey, what is going on over here? They did tilt-up construction. So we met with them and found out that one of the project managers was somebody who used to work for us years ago as a contractor, and they used CM at risk. So they took that project, we did a tour and went and saw them. They built a 90,000 square foot facility in under 15 months, 12 to 15 months, 3 stories to house 700 people for $10.2 million. We couldn't come close to touching that. And so full disclosure, the building was not completely fit out because they were going to, their model would, they lease the facility and they do the final fit out of whatever the customer wanted it configured at, but still. So we're challenging our folks under some of the new authorities, how can we get after something like that to give a commander a facility they need much quicker? So like I said, I'm encouraged about those. The other thing I'll tell you is other transactional authority that you mentioned, General. We are looking at that as well. Mr. Oshiba, before he left, we're looking at some smart basing, smart infrastructure technology things through other transactional authority. I think also our energy area and others are looking at how can we use that other transactional authority to get after some of these innovative things and cutting edge technology that is going to take us too long maybe the other way, and just test the concepts. And you know, if we take some and they work out, great. If they don't, then we at least tried.
Okay, Scott, hey, thanks very much. So I want to thank the panel for those tremendous insights. I'm reminded that what you do as small businesses not only contributes to the readiness of our military forces and to our veterans, but it serves as that economic engine that is the United States, and you are invaluable. And so I appreciate you all's time being here today. With that, we are on time and under budget. So we have about 15 minutes now remaining. If you all have any questions that you would like to ask this exalted panel. Ladies and gentlemen, sir, and there's microphones coming your way.
Well, the switch and bait problem that you described is a real problem. It prevents a lot of small businesses from getting government work. I know personally of a fellow friend of mine who indicated that what they do is send out inquiries to those who know won't be able to fulfill the requirements. Wouldn't it be good if they were asked to make announcement on a website that they're seeking these type of qualifications from a small business, so that this abuse is curtailed? Because really the goal of the small business set aside and the 23% goal that's there is to foster innovation and benefit the government. And unfortunately, the way the practices are right now, that's not being accomplished.
So I think you're asking, where do you get the visibility of the opportunities?
There are, in order to fulfill some of the goals that are there, some of the primes who want to do the work themselves don't make a good faith effort.
Okay, panel, any, go right ahead, please.
So you think you're talking about more or less enforcement and accountability. So when I was a small business, I ran about 16 of them over the last 25 years. We would often use our technical capabilities, and then we would be bid with a larger prime, right? They'd win the contract, and all of a sudden there was no opportunity for us, right? And then what happens, they do the slow roll with government. If you really want to get going, well, we're looking as hard as we can. You know, Rob Wong's company isn't able to do this, so we're running out of time. You need to make a mod, and you need to let us go ahead, right? That's the game that's being played. One of the things that the general had said before is that what we're trying to do as a government is to look at the accountability, that if you're not going to use those people, then it's going to be reflected in your CPARs, right? So one of the amendments that I've also talked in a different bunch of people was that oftentimes when you make a bid, the company that you're using with those capabilities is available. But sometimes the acquisition takes too long and they are unavailable, or the key people who have the innovation that you're talking about aren't available anymore. But so what I would suggest doing is maybe altering it a little bit, that if you're taking company A, my suggestion would be is that at the time that you make the award, if company A is not available, you give the large business an opportunity to replace with like or similar business. But in the end, what I would look at is if the award is actually not made, if they pass that second hurdle and they use company B, if they don't fulfill the elements of their subcontracting plan, those things, in my opinion, should reflect in the CPARs. And I'm a lawyer by trade. One of the suggestions I would have to the committee is to actually take some of the elements out of this small business plan and put them into the acquisition document. Then they become legally enforceable right away. And it's all for all to see. If you don't hit these plans, it will be reflected proportionally in your CPARs.
All right, Rob, thanks very much. Very helpful. And we have a question over here, sir.
Yes, hi, Jim Hoffman from Summer Consultants. Hey, there's been a couple education sessions for small businesses, and there's a DFARS clause, which is safeguarding covered defense information in cyber incident reporting. That clause is added to every contract that's not COTS. So it's coming to the AEC arena. And for the unclassified projects, we've not been able to understand if there is any covered defense information for USACE and NAVFAC. And a concern is that we're required to start taking actions, if you will. Teams are spending money to take measures or plan measures without knowing as to whether there will ever be any covered defense information in these unclassified contracts. So if there's any way we can first of all find out what CDI is so we can triage it, and secondly, I'm not sure how, if guidance says you put the DFARS clause in every contract, yet it's unlikely to have CDI, is there some way to mitigate that? Because we're basically instructed to take actions immediately by signing the contract, while there's uncertainty as to whether it will apply in the future. Thank you.
Okay, USACE or NAVFAC, thoughts on that?
I think it's a really good point. It is a mandatory clause. So I think that would come back to that communication and the partnering aspect of what we do to make sure we are working with the requirements generator to know at the time of the solicitation, we may not know, right? So, but the clause is mandatory. But I think those are good points to reinforce that we need to be more communicative to you before you start spinning up, perhaps. But sometimes, I don't know how the rest of you feel, sometimes we won't know. We really just won't know at that time. But I think to keep that on the forefront and talk about it is key.
Mike, anything else to add?
No, sir. Just I couldn't hear everything you said, but most of what you're talking about, though, was cybersecurity, correct? Okay, so just so you all are aware of this, we are under attack every day from a cyber perspective. You are under attack if you are doing defense contracts. There are some very mature countries around the world that are actively seeking information from us and from you of what is it you're supplying. So the cyber information assurance defense folks are scared to death that one of the weak areas is our actual contracting partners that are actually supplying us with either supply services or construction. And are we losing that cyber battle? So if you look at the cyber awareness things, some of what we're asking you to do is have standalone machines that you actually do your defense contracts with that are not networked, that are not connected. And I will tell you that this is a very complicated and confusing area because the rules change every day. So do the best you can. And if you do have questions about does this apply to your contract or not, get with the requiring activity or get with your contracting officer, and we'll do the best to give you guidance.
All right, complicated and confusing, reminds me of my honeymoon. Okay, we got one more question back here, and then we're going to come over here. Sir.
Paul Curtis, Kurtum Companies. I heard that Colonel Matthews made some kind of a statement about the utilization of construction management at risk. I wanted to know if he could elaborate on that. Is that San Antonio or Air Force wide, or is it even an effort, some kind of an initiative? Thank you.
So to clarify, I recently saw this project. We went out and toured it, discussed with the team that built it, and trying to learn more about CM at risk, because right now there's some there's perceptions, I'm being told, or actual facts that we are not able to do early contractor involvement CM at risk under the FAR. Now I have a couple folks looking into this. They went out to DBIA and brought back some literature about how you can navigate doing CM at risk through the FAR, and we're looking at trying to do a prototype or a pilot project at some point, but we need to make sure we're navigating through properly. So we have not done it yet. We're looking at it as something we'd like to get after, perhaps to help meet our speed and agility problem.
Okay, thanks for that. We have a question here,
Yeah.
and we'll come all the way back over here. Great, thank you.
So the one thing I'll add, and thank you for that, is that even across different districts, across different organizations, what exactly is CM at risk? It means different things, different people, early contractor involvement. We have a different relationship with an organization called Defense Infrastructure Organization overseas in the UK, where we're a design and construction agent, that we're looking at it there too. So I do appreciate that, and thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Genevieve Hansen from Concourse Federal Group. We are SDVOSB Hub Zone. Appreciate all your thoughts and loved hearing about your astute observation on some of the challenges and even suggestions on how to address it. How can we track what you're doing to remedy these issues and really monitor the progress?
All right, fair point. Mike, quickly.
Yes, sir. Actually, it's being tracked by everybody. We have small business specialists at every command. So to that point, Dr. Peoples, other small business government employees, would you please stand up? So these folks that are standing up right now are the experts in small business. They track every dollar, every contract award. The subcommittee on small business in the House and the Senate tracks our spend in our in numbers of contracts. So This is, Dr. Peoples briefs me pretty much every week on where we are within USACE, for
How
example.
about the other services? I mean, is there a central repository on a website? Obviously, there's FedBiz Ops that you can go into and seek opportunities, but how else do they track what's going on in the small business realm?
Are you talking about the goals? I wasn't sure, or the efficiencies that we've done? Yeah, just wanted to.
And wanted to find out, how do we know the progress that you're making in the new ideas that we've heard today?
Right, so I would say that similar, the small business specialists, obviously at NAFAC, we're hand in hand in that. We don't have anything posted on our portal necessarily about that. That's what, yeah, I think that's what you were getting to. Yeah, hopefully you're seeing them in the awards that you have, that you're seeing us being able to go faster or a change in the policy or the procedure, but also all of the small business specialists that you work with should be aware, at least at NAFAC, we call it a flash. We flash all of our process changes that we put out to the field, and so you should be able to talk to and hear about it from the NAFAC representation, and I'm sure that's the same for the rest of the services. But good point on posting that at a central location. We've done a few RFIs to get some feedback on different things. That may be another FedBiz Ops area as well.
And I would just offer, if you want to stay connected, come back next year to the SAME Small Business Conference, because this is where you get a lot of that back and forth and updates, and it's a way of staying current within this.
I just have one
I'll give you
alibi.
the final word, and then we'll close
Well,
it
this is
up.
pretty rough, it's the final word, but I really appreciate that question. My job is really to track key performance indicators to ensure commanders are connected to what we want to happen. So we do this on a routine basis, but we'll track some CPARs or contract closeout. I mean, we probably do need to add some of the things we just highlighted here to have the visibility on it. I mean, we make it really complicated if we could, but the reality is we have to drive change through what commanders are discussing routinely. So I really do appreciate your question. Thanks.
Okay, so once again, on behalf of SAME, I want to thank the panel members for being a part of this discussion this morning. I only saw one walkout, and I think I saw that same person on Bourbon Street last night, so I think that may have had a little something to do with it. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for being a part of this discussion today. Enjoy the remainder of the conference and the closeout. Don't forget to tip your waitresses, and I'll be here the rest of the week. All right, night.